It's time once again for Conversations with Bob and Sherry. Hello,
Hi,
Sherry.
Bob. How are you? I know we're going to talk about a different subject, but I just want to recap some of the things we discussed in the last show. Is
Okay.
not only the NIH employee had getting royalties from the vaccine company, as we discussed, they also have firsthand information about where the stock's going to be. I'll give you
Oh,
an
sure.
example. Moderna stock in February 21st, 2020, it's $18.23 a share. Okay? Now, 2019, it was hovering on an average of $16. Then the pandemic hit. In the very beginning of the pandemic, for some reason, May 8th, 2020, this is before the vaccine came out, their stock went up to $50.25. This is over a 2 months period in the middle of the pandemic. Why did the stock price go up? $69, August 14th, 2020. January 29th, 2021. So November 20th. This is while they're pushing for the vaccination. $97. At the highest of the stock, which is October 8th, 2021. That's when they got rid of the J&J. They're only recommending Moderna and Pfizer. The stock was at $304.91. So from 2019 to 2021, short 2 years, the stock increased about $280. Although today is at 141, but still.
When did Moderna first pop up? You had it in early 20?
Early 20, yeah, January 2021. I did a 5-year curve
Okay.
because before 2020 and 2019, the stock is hovering about $16, $18. And then all
Okay.
of a sudden it's steadily climbing. And, this is when the pandemic initially happened. That's the Moderna stock.
Well, in January 2020, that's when they first announced they were developing a vaccine for the COVID, an RNA vaccine for COVID.
January 2020, that's before they shut the country down. They shut
Correct.
the country down March 15th. So why
Right.
are they developing a COVID vaccine
Well, it was
for
in
COVID?
China,
It was in China.
and yeah, I don't know if it was in Italy yet,
Okay. Okay.
but
Well, you know what? I don't believe it at all. So now that I see this stop price and you're saying they're announcing develop COVID vaccine in January when nobody in America care about the COVID, right? Remember Trump was xenophobic. COVID is not a big deal, right? Nancy Pelosi went to Chinatown, celebrated Chinese New Year, and then literally a month later they shut the country down.
oh, and I liked how all of them said under Trump when Trump announced the vaccine was going to come out. I'm not taking a vaccine if Trump's part of the development.
Right.
Oh, I guess
Exactly.
they're not going to listen to science then when Trump's a
Right.
president.
Anyway, so I just want to point that out because when we got done with our last show, I was like, wait a second. Not only they're getting royalties from from pharmaceutical company, they do have first-hand information what vaccine they're approving, and these information gets communicated. So I believe all these people's stock portfolios should be looked at. When did they buy the stock? When did the vaccine came out? When did they receive royalties? When did this count? I mean,
It happens in Congress all the time. I mean, they
I think
they have information.
I think
Again, if
that really should be that should be changed. I
I
think if
mean,
that changed, we're going to see this country going to the right direction.
if you're an officer of the company or you're in a company position, say in engineering, you know some things that investors don't know.
Hmm.
You're not allowed to trade based on that. It's called
It's
insider information.
exactly, but
If you know something that the general investor doesn't know, you're not allowed to buy or sell stocks based on that knowledge.
and Nancy Pelosi trades on it, or their family trades on it, right?
Right.
So there should be a law against that because that just makes our lawmakers and our people that are supposed to look out for United States for the people.
Well, we're just the
Greedy.
regular people. You know, we those laws are just for us. They're better than we are. They can do those things.
That's right. And I just told my husband about the Moderna stuff. He said, well, too bad we didn't buy any. I said, we don't work for the government. We don't know. We wouldn't know. How will we know? By the time we get to it, it's too late. So anyway, so this is going to be our Hollywood version of the show, right? We're going to what do you want to talk about, the Oscar or the Jesus Revolution? Which one?
Whichever.
We'll talk about a little bit about the Oscar because that's a fast, quick thing.
Okay.
So I have not watched any award shows for a while because it was
Neither have I, by the way. But I watched this one.
It was getting way too political. It was getting, everybody is making Trump jokes. After a while, it gets old. Even if you laugh about the first couple, it gets old. So let me ask you this. I didn't watch the show, but what made you want to watch this one?
I have no idea. It was really weird. Now, I know you didn't like it, but I watched everything everywhere all at once, and I thought it was a good movie. I mean, it was weird. There was a lot of weirdness, but I felt like at the end, when everything was kind of revealed, as far as what the metaverse was and all that, I liked it at that point. I in hindsight, but so
I hated the whole movie.
I liked it a lot. I was actually going to recommend you watch it, thinking that you could relate to the relationship between the young girl and her mother. And
it was excruciating to watch.
I liked it. I actually thought about watching it again. But anyway, I watched it, and I will say the best speeches came from the man, I think it was supporting actor, the Vietnamese guy. He actually played.
I think so too.
He played the gadget kid on Goonies.
And he was in Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he came out. His speech was basically only in America. It was like, I love America. This is great, and they cheered for it. I mean, for a Hollywood that's normally anti-American, it was refreshing. And then the woman, hers again was like a traditional, the way you might see an Oscar speech 30-40 years ago, is just very happy, very positive. And she said to all the little girls out there, just so you know, you're not past your prime, or don't let anyone tell you you're past your prime.
Yeah. I tell you what, as an Asian and Chinese, I was very happy to see the Asian movie got recognized at the Oscar. I was very happy to see that. Well, this is not the first Asian movie got the award. It's the Crouching Tiger and Flying Dragon, whatever. Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah, I never saw the movie, but I remember it won a bunch of awards.
It won a bunch of awards. It was a Taiwanese director, used a Hong Kong actor. Michelle Yeoh is actually a Malaysian Chinese.
Right.
And I remember her very early on. She got her fame playing the police story with Jackie Chan. And I have to tell you, just like I hated the Crazy Rich Asian movie, just like I like the Crouching Tiger movie, but it's not the best Chinese movie I've ever seen.
I mean, the Crazy Rich Asians was, I don't know, it was a little over the top.
Yeah. And I personally I was so looking forward to see this movie. It came on, I believe it's HBO or Prime, and I hated it. I hated everything about this movie. And when they did receive the award, Michelle Yeoh wasn't so. I would say her performance in The Crouching Tiger, it's better than this one. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I can say is, I'm glad the Chinese movie finally got the recognition, and I'm happy to see there's more doors open for Asian actors. Right. And however, I hope this is not a nod to the communism China, because if you remember Donnie Yun, which is another Cantonese actor I never liked, he's becoming very famous in China because he is all for the communism government party, their policy on Hong Kong and everything.
Okay.
The Chinese people in America signed a petition, collected 9,000 signatures within minutes, and say, the Academy should not invite him to United States because he was for communism government against human rights in Hong Kong, and they invited him anyway. And I watched the Chinese side report, and the Chinese side report is saying Don Yun is against all odds, still came to America. Now he became a hero now in the communism China because Mr. Bravery came to Academy Award, present an award, right?
Well, you know how much money, they stand to risk by upsetting the Chinese government. So it's like the NBA. Hollywood's not going to go against regardless. Human rights don't matter. I mean, here's the thing. They can do what they're doing, and they do. They push their agenda and their ideology and everything, always to the point where it costs money. Yep. Once they start losing money, they back off.
And if you I don't know if you remember, a few years back, Jackie Chan said something about Hong Kong sovereignty. And right after that, Chinese government confiscated his condo in Beijing. Mm-hmm. Used some kind of excuse, okay? So then he went back. He's in these Chinese celebration. So he agreed to record this video. It's very pro-China propaganda with a lot of Hong Kong celebrity. After that video, that whole thing went away. He got his condo back from Beijing. So this is just a tactic. So I'm very torn about the winning of the award with the two Asian actors. Now, the guy, he's from Vietnam, actually. So he said, I was on the boat. I live in the refugee camp. And looking now, I'm on the biggest stage in Hollywood. And this says this is a true American dream. I think that's the best speech I remember for a lot of award shows besides Chris Pratt's speech and one of the Young Kids Award. Michelle Young, their speech are great, but I'm wondering the motive behind giving these two awards to the two Asian actors. And also the monologue. I think a lot of people want to watch Oscar because after Will Smith slapped Chris Rock last year. And
correct.
Yeah. They want to see what the monologue is. I think Jimmy Kimmel did a good job, to be fair, not to be political.
I don't like Jimmy Kimmel.
I know you don't like Jimmy Kimmel. But I thought
you're right. It wasn't terrible.
It wasn't terrible.
He made a joke about QAnon people. Which I don't use the word QAnon. I still say Q.
But I think even though he made a joke about QAnon people, it was very light. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't
dragging on it. So I think he was fair all the way.
I would have rather Chris Rock host.
Chris Rock.
That would have been, their ratings would have been through the roof if he had hosted.
Well, I think that he's going to host a SAG Award next year.
Okay.
He might have some kind of contract with Netflix. So Netflix had his special out a week before the Oscar.
Oh, okay.
Right? So
he may have had somewhat of an exclusive that he couldn't.
Exactly.
Quote. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But he's going to host SAG Award for Netflix, I think.
Okay.
Next year. So he's going. Chris Rock's career is on a rocket ship right now. I mean, he has to do something really bad to screw it up because everybody is on his side. And the fact that his special is so good, he's getting the Democrats and Republicans. I mean, if he's running for president in 2024, I bet you he'll win.
Right.
So, no, I mean, I'm glad to see the award shows back to where the old Hollywood, they keep it entertainment, less politics, less preaching. Jimmy Kimmel, to me, is an average comedian. Some of the skit he does, I don't think is that funny. The only thing is, as far as diversity concerned this year, I don't see a lot of black actors and actresses getting recognized. I have not watched Women King, but one of my favorite black actresses is Viola Davis. She is just amazing. The fact that she's not being nominated, I felt like, the Oscar kind of cut her short. So I'm one of her supporter. I felt like she should get some kind of recognition.
I mean, there were some really interesting presenters. I didn't keep track of, the race or the demographics of the people who were nominated and won. But I thought that what's there? So the movies I saw, I thought that Jamie Lee Curtis by far deserved that. I mean, the role she played was so like
Off the
not
wall.
like anything she'd ever done.
I
I mean, a lot of times, even like Robert De Niro. I mean, when Robert De Niro acts, it's Robert De Niro. You know, it's there in just about every role that
Yeah.
he does. And, you know, when she played that role, there was no Jamie Lee Curtis in that character at all. It
No,
was just
actually,
crazy.
I almost did not recognize that was Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, yeah, the way they had her dressed, and
Yes.
it was this unappealing. It was really, I thought that deserved a Best Supporting Actress award, and I was glad to see her win it.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of the other movie. Usually I don't watch a lot of the Oscar movie. I watched Michelle Yeoh movie because I'm a fan of Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
Another actress showed up at the Oscar, and not too many people notice it, is a famous Chinese actress called Fan Bingbing. She disappeared for a while in China, and because she accused some kind of vice chair something that sexually harassed her. She said something
Right.
in Weibo, and she wound up have to break up with her fiance. They went after her for tax evasion, and then she disappeared for a few years. I don't know how she got all that cleared out. Now she's back in the big international scene. She's in Germany, I guess, for a film festival, and she was at the Oscar. So it was just interesting. Are all these nice and quiet little, you know, messages that come
Right.
in that that Hollywood basically say to the Chinese government, "We're on your side," you know. So that's my take on it.
I find the different ethnicities of people and things in movies, I find it very interesting. One thing I don't find interesting most of the time is the LGBTQ thing. I mean, you know, in Everything Everywhere All at Once, it was about the girl's conflict with her mother, not really living up to the mother's expectations. And to me, that's very relatable, you know, as a parent and as a child, you know, and the fact that they made her a lesbian wasn't bad. I mean, it didn't really ruin it for me, but I will say The Whale, I mean, I thought it was a great job of acting, but, you know, the whole, you know, gay theme around it just wasn't interesting to me.
It was not necessary. I didn't watch The Well yet, and I'm a big fan of Brendan Fraser. I'm
It's from Broadway, so you get a lot of that in Broadway. And it's one of those movies you can tell it's from Broadway because it pretty much is all in the same room, the whole movie.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I guess whoever wrote it is probably gay and everything. And it's fine. But I guess what I don't find interesting about it is it's almost like a stereotype. It's so predictable. You know, as soon as you find out someone's gay, it's like, oh, okay, well, I can pretty much tell you what's going to happen, or it's going to be one of these three things. It's, you know.
Well, let me just rebuttal a little bit about the lesbian and the girl in this movie, because in an Asian family, that's a big deal. It may not be a big deal in an American family because in the West it's widely accepted. But in general, in Asian country, having your kids to come home and say they're gay or lesbian, it's a very big deal. I think they have to work through a lot. So in that movie, I can say yes. But on The Whale, now I didn't watch The Whale, so I didn't realize Brendan Fraser's character is gay.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I know a lot of gay men. They're very well dressed. They're very good looking. And they watch their body.
Yeah, so it may be a play on that.
Yeah, the fact that you have a gay man that's actually that obese and overweight and doesn't care about his look, I don't know. I mean, that's not a typical gay man that I know of.
I think the majority of you know, LGBTQ activists would not like what you just said. I mean, there's obviously a message out there that there's all this suppression and all these terrible people that have to be opposed, and
Right.
gay rights is such a big deal, and you know, you just kind of soft pedaled it.
Well, maybe I'm just like lucky. I mean, I've known a gay man that's kind of big, but but majority of the gay men I know, they are very well dressed. They care about their body. They don't have a lot of them don't have kids. They have a lot of time to work on themselves.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize he's gay. Didn't he have a daughter too in the movie?
Yeah, he has a daughter. It's well, again,
Well, that part I don't know. That part I don't know.
Everything Everywhere All at Once. There was a lot of there was a lot to the issue, the relationship with her mother. It wasn't just the one thing. If it was just all about her being a lesbian, it would have not worked for me. But it was a complex issue. So, it was fine. But yeah, so Brendan Fraser, right? He was married to a woman, closeted gay guy. He had a daughter, he had a gay lover. Then his gay lover died. So, he embarked on this self-destructive eating thing. And then in comes the Christian to try to help him, to save him. And, of course, the Christian ends up totally botching a Bible verse, and they turn it into an anti-gay thing. And, he makes a stand, if you're telling me that my love for my love of my life was wrong, then you just leave right now. And the guy left. It was just so ridiculous. It was just so cliche.
Well, I personally know a man that he was married to his wife for 12 years, and his wife had cancer and passed away. Now, he was very dedicated to his wife, and he was very much in love with his wife, and he had a daughter, 2 daughters. And when his wife passed away, he came out to the daughters and told them, I'm actually gay, and he went and found a partner, and they're very happy. I mean, he quit his current job, went out leaving. I've known the guy for over 10 years. And when he told me that, and I said, how do you feel about it? And he said, well, I'm really sad the fact that my wife died. I truly, truly loved her. But I'm also need to be who I am. And I came out to my daughters, and my daughters all understood. Now, at that point, the daughters are teenagers. And so,
but he remained faithful to his wife until she died.
He remained faithful to his wife while he was married, even though. So, I mean, there was actually, because I'm in the wedding flower business, so I've known a lot of gay men, right? So, I mean, I have a good friend. He owns a flower shop. Appearance, he's not the typical gay man. He loves sports. Besides his voice, if you look at him, he's not the typical, I describe, well-dressed, good-looking, all that stuff. And, that's the guys he said to me. He said, just because I'm gay doesn't mean I'm not a man. Just because I'm gay doesn't mean I don't love sports. So, so yeah, I've learned a lot in being in the wedding business
That's one of the problems I have. I mean, people are complex. All people are complex.
Right.
And, for you to tell me that every gay man meets this stereotype that they present always in Hollywood, it's just so wrong and boring. I mean, so when I saw The Whale, I mean, if you had taken that whole gay storyline out of it, it would have been a much better movie. And I feel like, so if anyone's hearing this and they're not a Christian, go watch one of your average Christian movies that Christians love. And you're going to walk away going, what was that?
Yeah.
That's how I am when I go see a movie like this. I feel like the people that wrote it and the people that presented it, they did this and then they sat back and said, wow, that's really going to change people's mind. That's really going to open some eyes. And I'm like, no, I've seen it 100 times. It's the same old. No, it doesn't impact me at all. It bores me.
Well, to me, that movie would be like, I haven't seen the movie, but it sounds like it's depression, and depression driven him into obesity.
Yeah.
And to a point where he doesn't care about his health. Now, I mean, I have a lot of experience. I personally are not obese, but my husband has suffered through an eating disorder, have struggled for, I would say, for majority of his life with food. You talk about alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and he struggled a lot with food. and I'm sure there's some depression issue from his parents. And the thing is, when he did eventually got out of it, and he dropped 100 pounds, he become healthy, he reversed his blood sugar level, all that stuff. When he eventually got out of it, it was so interesting to me because, when people got out of being alcoholic and people got out of being like smoking too much pot, they're like, wow, I have no idea why I even did that. Where was mine at? He had the same reaction. Like a year and a half after he finally had this mindset set, because before he was up and down with the weight. He'll lose and he'll gain, he'll lose his gain. And it's a very vicious cycle. And I think it actually threw him back into depression when you lose the weight and you gain it back. And then you uncontrollable eating. But when he eventually changes complete mindset, understanding his relationship with food, and he looked back and like, oh my God, I don't know why I did that. So I think I'm delaying to watch this movie because last year on my husband's birthday, one of his good friend died, and he was in the same situation as Brendan Fraser at the well. He could not walk from his bed to his bathroom, and he just will starve himself in the morning and eat controllably. And my husband was calling him, trying to help him. Eventually, he couldn't be helped. He died of obesity. So I think I want to see the movie really bad because I love Brendan Fraser. I understand the struggle people with eating disorder will go through, and with obesity, the health issue will come with it. But I think I'm procrastinating because I know it will be very painful to watch it, because I personally lived with my husband who I married for 20 some years, watch him struggle, eventually got out of it, and then watch his friend struggle and wind up losing his life. So I think the focus of the movie should be on the obesity and the health. And like these days, just like you should not fat shame someone, and everything is beautiful. I told my husband one time, if you're 400 pounds and you don't have all these health issues, it's one thing. But people that are obese and would develop all kinds of health issues, it's a slow death.
Yeah.
And
the only ones that don't have any struggles and health issues are very young. It's not going to last. It's not going to last.
And even when the young people, I know this guy comes in, two guys, they're in their one's in their late 20s, one's in the 30s. They all big guys, great personality. No girls want to date them, and it's very inconvenient. It affects more health issue than anybody can imagine. So when people say fat shaming, I can understand if somebody wear glasses or they're not as attractive and you laugh at them because they're ugly. But the problem is, like when I was a kid, I wear glasses. People tease me, call me four eyes. Right. Well, it's not impacting my health, right? But when people are 300 pounds, 200 pounds, and like the girl rapper, what is her name? I forgot what's her name.
Oh, yeah. I never heard even a song. I only saw her. But, yeah, I know which
one
you mean.
She's wearing bikini. Everybody says, oh, she's beautiful, this and
she's
that.
Not.
What about her health?
It's not beautiful.
What about her health? Forget about the beauty. That's why when people say, don't be so shallow.
It's a lie, though.
It's a lie.
It's like, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? No, it's not. It's like the emperor new clothes, Don't we love his clothes? The guy's naked. Everybody's like, yeah, we love it. He looks good.
I think that's the thing. If you have
You're not doing the emperor any favors by lying to him.
No, and the women's size is so funny because now we have juniors, where size 2 in women is different from size 2, regular size 2. So you have a 2 petite. So just to make women feel good, I fit into a size 2. Well, what store are you going to fit in the size 2?
Right.
If you go to a cachet, you fit in a size 2. That's not a true size 2. That's a size 8. So, we're aligned for my thing is, the reason this movie I think would be good is because we have all tell the young kids it's okay to be fat. No. It's okay to be unhealthy. Yeah. And that's the message we've been giving to these kids. And that's why I think this movie, hopefully, it will serve some kind of.
I don't think a term like fat shaming should even exist.
Yes.
I mean, you're either kind and respectful and nice to people, or you're not, or you're mean and you're a jerk. So, to say she doesn't look attractive, I'm not being mean, or I would never say that if there weren't people out there going, "Oh, look how beautiful she is." It's like, don't say that, I mean, yeah, there's no need to say she's unattractive because everyone knows it. That an obese body is not attractive, period. Never. I mean, there are some, a handful of people in the world that like it, but, there are people that like a lot of things that aren't right.
But the thing is, you can say she is attractive, so she feels good, she want to maintain her weight because this is her image. Mm-hmm. But what is that doing for her health? At the end of the day, it's not doing anybody any good to maintain a 300, 400-pound body because it hurts your joint, it hurts your liver, it hurts your heart. I mean, scientifically, it's not healthy. If everybody, and the same people talk about believe in science, also say it's beautiful to be 100 pounds.
Do you remember the movie Leaving Las Vegas? Nicolas Cage, an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So basically, he gives in to his addiction. He just says, he goes to Las Vegas, like, I'm just going to drink myself to death. I'm going to die in my addiction. It's a hopeless, I give up situation. The reality of that is, it doesn't matter what events of his life and things caused him to start to drink in the first place. It's the addiction now. The addiction has taken over, and it's just alcohol doing this to him. And that, it's possible The Whale was a ripoff of Leaving Las Vegas, but I think they lost a lot of the realism by making it so much about his gay lover and all that. Because, he was lost. A person like that is lost in that addiction. He's given up. My body's falling apart. I'm done. I'm just going to lean into my addiction and end it as quick. It's like suicide.
That's exactly what happened to my husband's friend. He leaned into his addiction. Right. He eat like uncontrollably at night. They
made it out to be all this be who you are and, and the bad Christian and my gay lover this. And the reality is it doesn't matter what pushed him into the addiction. The fact that he's there, it's all the addiction now. It's only him and his addiction to food. And that would be the real way to depict a situation like that. So,
and that is a true way, because when you are in a situation where you're so addicted, you go food binging, it is not only painful for the person that's doing it, because after you binge on the food, you go back, you're like, why did I eat all this? I'm very ashamed of myself. You sink into depression, you do it all over again. It's no different than any other addiction. Yep. And the people you live with, your family, your kid, and it's very painful to watch this. My husband was over and over again having episodes have to be rushed to the hospital. So, and it was very difficult until you get out of it. And I can't even describe to you. So I can't wait to see The Whale, but I probably will relate to it a lot. But now talk about another movie that we watched, and because in reality they could have made this a gay thing a thing, but they didn't. And it was a very good movie. It's Jesus Revolution. Now, I didn't know about this movie until I see somebody post on social media saying it's contradiction. So I call you and I say, hey, watch this movie because let's talk about this movie. Mm-hmm. I went to the movie theater expecting one thing because not knowing this is a true story. I have to tell you, I did not stop crying watching the entire movie. It was so good. It was so, you feel the presence. I don't want to say this, maybe, but you feel the presence of God. You feel the presence of the spiritualness watching this movie. And it was portrayed in a very real way. Everyone in this movie, they're flawed, right? Every single one of them. And it was just a good movie. I want to talk about the character Lonnie Frisbee later, but what were your thoughts on that movie?
Well, I mean, a minute ago I sort of side-handedly criticized Christian movies, but I after the movie I had to look it up to see if it was made by Christian filmmakers, and based on the website, I'm pretty sure it was. And the reason I had to was because you could go see it and watch it and have no idea the people who made the film are Christians, because it's not pushing, it's not pushing a message like, say, The Whale was. I mean, it's just depicting the events that happened. And I mean, I honestly, I didn't know anything about that. I was a child in the 60s and, early 70s. So I remember the time. So it was actually extremely interesting for me to kind of re-experience, the 60s. It's been a while since I saw a movie that made me recall people of the 60s and, what it was like. And, I mean, I thought it was right on. It basically, what's his name? Lonnie. Yeah, he's a hippie. He's a hippie, becomes a Christian, and he meets this old guy, pastor, and they talk about, hippies, essentially. And he said, basically, Lonnie was saying these hippies are looking for meaning in life. They're searching for something bigger. And they used, Timothy Leary and the drugs and everything. And, he said they're looking for God. They just don't know it. So, the squares, the older folks at the time were kind of, rejected these folks, that they were defective, they were, lost or whatever. And he convinced this pastor to say, that's what Jesus cares about, is lost people. And these people are seeking for God. Make no mistake about it. And it drew into this huge revival. So, in fact, those young people were experiencing God and, responding to a message of God.
Well, when I went to see this movie, I remember I called you. You watched it before me, and I said, "Is it okay to bring my son?" You said, "Yes, it's okay." We wound up did not bring him, but when we sat down the movie, my husband, who always falls asleep in movies, actually really loved it because he grew up in the '60s and he was a hippie, right, in the '70s. It was a very confusing time, listening to his account, because it's the Vietnam War. And people are getting drafted, and a lot of people don't want to go to war. And he was getting his draft card ready to go, and so it was very confusing time for the youth.
Yeah,
And they do, he did experimenting drugs and acid and all kinds of stuff. So you're right. There's everybody searching for something. Eventually, he leaned into music. Some people lean into Jesus, and he actually told me, he said one of his friends, he referred to as one of these Jesus freaks. That's what he referred to. And now we're Jesus freaks.
That's where the word Jesus freak, I think, came from. Yeah.
Yeah. So he married a Jesus freak eventually. But I thought the movie, what I really love about the movie is you can really see into these people and what they're searching for, how they're confused. And, the fact that the leading character, Laurie, can't find anything, eventually went back to church. He was at a loss, right? It kind of reminded me when me and my father first moved to Hong Kong. My mother, my sister was left behind in China, and my dad has to travel a lot for work, and I was left there by myself. I was about 10, 12 years old. And then when you left there by yourself at that age, you're pretty lost. You're looking for something. And I remember this old lady said, well, why don't I take you to church? And it was interesting. So once you go to church, you feel this belonging. You feel like you belong to somewhere. And that is the initial thing. It's less a spiritual, but more of a human connection for me. So from that human connection, you start recognizing Jesus and your faith and all that stuff. I think it's a fantastic movie. Now, after the movie, and I went and did some research on Lonnie Frisbee. Turned out Lonnie has a homosexual past. He was married. He never come out admitted he was gay, and he just said he was raped at night point, and also he has experimented, but he never. If anybody want to look up Wikipedia, and I watched one of the great Laurie's interview with someone. So Lonnie went up, go back into drugs, and eventually died of AIDS. Now that was not mentioned in the movie, and I had this discussion with my husband. He said, well, maybe if you put that in the movie, it will kind of take away from the message of the movie itself. But what's really interesting, if you think about it, the guy who started the Jesus Revolution, started this revival movement, has a dark past. It's a very flawed man, right? He brought everybody to Jesus and he went back to his own thing. And I think in the movie, if you remember, Greg Laurie ran out of church and said, I hope this is just not just another high that's temporary and it's gone again, it's not foundational. And, we attend the same church and we have the same pastor. And I remember our pastor, Kurt Bjerkelen, one time says, when you come to church, if you take in the message like a consumer, right? If this message fits me, I like it for today, and then I don't like it for tomorrow, and I will leave the church. When I read Lonnie Frisbee's life, I felt like maybe God used him to bring all these people together to start this movement. He's a very flawed man. He admitted he had to fight his own addiction. And he bring all these flawed men to Jesus. But then the consumerism in him, when the religion doesn't fit him anymore, he went back to his original addiction. So that's my take on it after reading his Wikipedia.
Well, one of the things that I liked, it kind of go back, is the way it portrayed the drug scene, of the 60s, 70s, was pretty accurate in my mind. To me, too many of the movies that go back to the 60s glorify it. And I hear too many people say, well, it was the 60s. Well, it was the 70s or the 80s. That's what we did. Well, those people would probably have been what I would call amateurs, where they maybe dabbled into the drugs. They weren't out every weekend. I don't believe so because, I could tell you as much fun as it was at times, a lot of friends, my own personal experience, a lot of people, a lot of lives were ruined. People died. People were, injured for life. Lots and lots of bad things came out of it. And there was not long ago a show about Woodstock. I think there was a gentleman there working and he gives tours and things. And, they were talking about the drug culture of the time. Yeah. And I was ready for them to, okay, here we go. They're going to talk about how awesome it was. And no, this old guy, he said, he talked about how they approached it at the time. And he goes, but we didn't know. He goes, we had no idea what we were doing and how bad it was really. We had no idea how bad that stuff really was. So I was glad to hear that. It's true. As you were talking about them not talking, bringing the gay storyline into Lonnie, it occurred to me, some people might criticize that and say, wow, there they go. They can't be honest about it. But
I actually said that to my husband.
Did you?
I think they should be truthful about this.
Well, look at it this way. They'll bring the gay storyline into movies unnecessarily. And I even said it depends on how they do it. Like Everything Everywhere All at Once I thought was good. The whale, I thought it ruined it. So if it's okay to just shoehorn it in there and make a decision that you're going to put it in there for creative whatever, why is it not okay to just decide to leave it out in another case?
The way I look at it, because there was a scene in the movie where Lonnie and Chuck Smith Jr. had a disagreement. And the reason Chuck Smith decided to direct Lonnie out of the church is because he felt Lonnie was too much into the Holy Spirit thing, the cure thing, the big performance thing. And he said, we don't want to do that. In actuality, if what I read in the Wikipedia is true, it has something to do with the fact that someone told Chuck Smith Jr. that Lonnie Frisbee was having a homosexual relationship with another man, and that was the reason he got kicked out of the church. Now, I just think it's a really, I'm not going to say ironic, but is such a conversation, I think, that Christian has to talk about is this very loving man. Lonnie Frisbee, in actual, I believe he's a very loving person. He accepted everybody, no judgment on people. He created a lot of commune. And this man that started the Christian entity revival and Jesus Revolution actually is basically hiding his own demon because it wasn't right with the church. You have to hide it. Supposedly that's an open secret. That's what I think the struggle of this movie could be. But maybe another movie should be made strictly on that.
So here's the thing. And like we said earlier, people are complex. Everyone's lives are complex. So, just because you heard that he was gay, you then kind of automatically start filling in all kind of blanks. You automatically assume that his whole issue was his struggle with being a gay man, closeted. And
I don't think I meant that.
That may not actually be the case.
I don't mean that, but I think that's the element. But that was a reason why he got kicked out of the church. But they couldn't portray that.
Was it? I mean,
according to Wikipedia, that was.
Wow. Okay. I'll give you an example of something that you have to be careful about. But when they showed him doing the healing and interrupting, so the other Kelsey Grammar was being pastor and he jumped up in the middle of the service and said, "I got to heal somebody."
Yeah.
What they were showing was the ministry becoming more about Lonnie and less about God and the people.
Sure. Yes.
It was an arrogance. It was, success does that to people. It happens to pastors all the time. So that's what I saw them depicting. Now, one problem with the movie in my mind is it moved very quickly. So if you remember, the opening scene happened and they did a 1 year later. And then they went back and they showed you how that kid got to that point.
Yeah.
That year happened like that. I mean, I saw it when they showed him at that baptism.
Right.
I'm like, the only reason they did it with a flashback was because they wanted to show you that real short period of time was really a year. Like, so many things happened. He was in military school. He dropped out of military school. He hooked up with these friends. They went out and did drugs like twice. And now he found Jesus. It just boom, 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 boom. It moved very, very quickly, which, I mean, in order to tell that story, I guess you had to have that. But I think it would make a good streaming, Netflix series kind of thing where you could really develop the characters and things like that. But that's a valid reason to say we don't really want to throw the gay theme in there because we're not really going to be able to flush it out. And, and again, if he was asked to leave because he had made things all about himself, that's what they were showing in the movie. We just don't know. I mean, you could say, yes, it was fact that this happened. It was fact that they found out about it. But, I mean, a lot of times things happen. You have employees. You might have an employee that you have reservations about and you're not totally happy and things aren't going the best and you're not sure. And then something happens and that's the last straw. You're like, okay, this is it. We're done.
Recently. Thank you.
It happens to everybody. I mean, I manage people too. But so now to that other person or someone on the outside, you're like, well, all he did was show up late one time. Well, no, it was all the stuff leading up to it and the whole, so.
And I keep in mind that is back in the 60s and 70s, people look at the gay community very differently, especially in the Christian community. I know we're going to have our pastor on to talk about this, and I would love to hear his perspective as well. But going back to what you said, I agree. Lonnie made the church about him instead of God. I agree with that.
And whether it was healings or gay or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I also think that may be the reason why he went back to his addiction. Because when he had to actually make the church about God, it's no longer about him. That high that he experienced has gone away. Maybe that's why he went back to his addiction and eventually died early.
And you said yourself, the impression you got from these people, not just Lonnie, but, Kelsey Grammar, is they were sincere. They really believed God was leading them. Kelsey Grammar was tolerating and welcoming and loving people that in that time, in that culture, he was told to reject.
He was told to reject.
Right?
Yes.
So now you're going to just suddenly believe that he did the same thing to, suddenly he just rejected Lonnie because he found out he was gay. I mean, it's probably, if Lonnie really was that way, it probably wasn't a surprise when he found out about it.
No, they say it's an open secret. Although I have to say, just on Kelsey Grammar's character, I think it's one of the best performances I've seen Kelsey Grammar do.
Yeah, it was good.
It was great, and I'm surprised he did not get nominated. I hope he will.
And you sent me that video with Greg Laurie on the YouTube. Yeah. I mean, he sounded like he was being sincere to me. I mean, a true Christian will be honest and will be sincere.
Yeah.
And, did he come off like he judged Lonnie for it? I mean, he acknowledged that it was a problem.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, he seemed like they still liked and cared about Lonnie.
Yeah, and I have to say that one of my favorite line in that movie is when Kelsey Grammar's character, Chuck Smith Jr., when the wife come to him and say, don't be so arrogant and think God cannot work through your mistakes, because he had reservation to go out to the church to preach since Lonnie was gone. He was afraid. And then again, his wife said to him that because at that moment, Kelsey Grammar made that church about him and Lonnie rather than God. And then when he went, he said, do you think, go out there to see those people, do you think you're big enough to kill that spirit? Because at that point, God is working the church and not Kelsey Grammar's character, not Lonnie's character. So that, I think itself, it was a fantastic message. And I actually wrote an email to our church suggesting our youth group make a field trip, take middle school, high schoolers to go see this movie. I can't make my kid to go see a movie that says Jesus Revolution. He goes, oh, that's just all propaganda. But if the church can take the kids, and I highly recommend any church or youth group, I think it's too young for elementary school, but middle to high school kids, I think if you would take them to see this movie, it's just a great movie, like you said. It's not preachy. It's what happened. So,
I mean, it's not super theological. I mean, it's just, it's basically, old-time religious people that rejected these rebellious kids. And this Lonnie came along and convinced Kelsey Grammar that, hey, this is your mission field. You got to love and care about these kids and welcome them in. And that's what happened. And I'm sorry, but the Christians are the good guys. That's the worst part about it.
Well, if you think about how the old timer, the squares, was judging those people, but in the New Testament, that's completely squashed, right? If you read the Old Testament, it's one thing, but in the New Testament, Jesus did love. He went to all the people that needs help. He went to all the poor, the cripples, and the people who needed help. And he himself did not ask for any money or nothing. And he just went and helped people. He accepted everybody. He accepted prostitutes, where at the time in that Middle East culture, no one accepted prostitutes.
But one of the disconnects between a true Christian understanding that and the culture is in the culture, and the only way to love someone is to completely endorse everything that they do and believe and say. And that is not the message of Jesus. I mean, Jesus wasn't like, you just go do your prostitute thing, you're fine. Don't let anybody deny who you are. No, and neither were the folks in this movie telling these kids, just keep doing your drugs, just keep doing whatever you want, and just come to church. And no, they weren't saying that. They were saying this is not the right lifestyle, but I'm not judging you. It's not you. It's the sin, and we're welcoming you. We're inviting you in. We're inviting you to an encounter and meet God, who's going to take care of all that for you.
So I'm really looking forward. We're having another conversation with some pastors to see how their take on
Yeah.
The movie, and the reality, and the real story. So, on that note, go ahead.
So you mentioned Wikipedia. Do you remember the Challenger explosion?
Yes.
Space shuttle?
Yes.
So when that happened, the company I was working for, Morton Thiokol, was a customer.
Okay.
And Morton Thiokol were the manufacturer of the solid rocket boosters.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't involved with that customer. I had never been to the customer site or anything like that. But I, had an awareness of when the thing blew up, everybody at work was talking about it. So I pretty much followed the events then that happened. And not long ago, I decided to look something up related to it. And I found there's a physicist, physics professor, Richard Feynman. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's sort of famous.
No.
Anyway, NASA formed this investigative committee, and Richard Feynman was invited to come on the committee, and he was a big, name. Well, if you go to his Wikipedia page, and I think the Challenger Wikipedia page too, they tell you that Richard Feynman is the one who discovered that it was the O-rings that failed. He investigated, he looked at all the situation, and then he discovered that these were the cause, and he did experimentation to prove it, and, he was the hero of the day. Well, in reality, before they even launched, the engineers, scientists at Morton Thiokol called NASA and said, do not launch.
Okay.
These O-rings have never been tested in these low temperatures. And we understand the properties of the O-rings and things. There's a risk of failure at a low temperature. So do not launch this rocket. I think the first time they held it, but they went ahead and ignored the manufacturer telling them not to launch, and they launched anyway, and the rocket blew up. So the manufacturer told them before it even so after it blew up, it's not like they brought Richard Feynman in. In fact, the Wikipedia pages will tell you everything I'm telling you, but they're deceptive in that they say Richard Feynman discovered all this, but then they also tell you the manufacturer warned them before they even launched. Well, Richard Feynman wasn't even involved. So if you could invite anybody, you could ask me to come on that committee, and I go, what happened? They say, well, they told us that we're going to fail. I'm like, well, let's look at those.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a genius to say we're going to look at those. They already knew. Feynman already knew what the failure mode was. All he did was run some experiments to prove it. That's all.
Wow.
So, and again, Wikipedia is giving this guy credit where he doesn't really deserve it. So it's not, those things aren't always accurate. But that's true about any reference you go to.
This was fun. I loved it. Yeah, this is great. I can't wait to see what Kerr said about the whole Lonnie Frisbee thing.
He might not even know. He may know, but you were, I don't know, somehow you heard about the gay angle and you looked it up. I didn't know.
Well, at the end of the movie, if you read everybody's what happened to them, it says Lonnie Silver died in 1993. And Chuck Smith Jr. died in 13 or 12. And I was like, wait, Lonnie's much younger. Why does he die so young? And then Randy's like, he probably died of AIDS. I'm like, oh. So when we were at lunch, I was like, oh my God, he had this, it wasn't mentioned in the movie. And I just thought that, so that's what Randy's was saying to me. He goes, well, if they mentioned it, it's probably going to take away from the movie. So my argument is, but it's what happened. Maybe you should have mentioned in the movie.
Okay, so the truth is, yes, he was gay and he had that issue, but you don't know that, it wasn't like everything's fine and dandy and they find out that he's gay, so they fire him. That's what Hollywood would have done.
That's what Hollywood would have done. Yeah. All right. I gotta go, but this was great. I can't wait till all the shorts come out. I think this is gonna be really great shorts. You gotta make that shorts into the whole O-ring thing. That's a good one. I didn't know that.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Hey, great conversation, Sherry.
Hey,
I can't wait to talk to you next week.
Okay, I'll talk to you. Bye.